What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in this video, I'm going to be going through my Week 15 wide receiver rankings. So going through the top 36 wideouts for this specific week. Hopefully this will help you guys set your lineups for the first round of the fantasy playoffs. And I'm going to be putting out the running back rankings today also. And then tomorrow on Thursday, I'll have quarterbacks, tight ends in the same video, and then defenses and kickers also. So those two will be coming out tomorrow. As always, if you guys have any questions, you can drop them down below. I will be responding to every single person. But let's just jump right into it. And I feel like, every single week we kind of have this same top five now that Jamar Chase is healthy. Not going to really nitpick between these guys because you're obviously starting all of them. Justin Jefferson at 1, Diggs at 2, Devontae Adams at 3, Jamar Chase at 4. Just put Tyreek Hill here at 5, dealing with the potential ankle injury. Maybe he's limited. If he's fully healthy, he would probably be higher than this. Then at 6, I have A.J. Brown. I love the matchup here against the Bears. I talked about this for Miles Sanders, but the Bears have just been getting torched as a defense. I am a Bears fan, and I am expecting this entire team to just go nuclear. It's going to be tough to watch, since I am rooting for them, but I'm expecting big things out of A.J. Brown this week. He's been a stud as of late, so like him as a mid-tier wide receiver 1. At 7, I have Keenan Allen. This is a great matchup for the Chargers, both Justin Herbert and then also all of these pass catchers. The Titans have just been brutal at stopping fantasy wide receivers, so I like Keenan here at 7. At 8, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not a great matchup here against the Jets, but I still think, he's very talented. I think he'll have a solid day. 9, I have CeeDee Lamb going up against the Jaguars. Lamb hasn't exactly been, killing it as a high-end wide receiver 1, but still someone you definitely trust week to week as a top 10, top 12 guy. At 10, this may be surprising to some people. I have Garrett Wilson in my top 10. He has a great matchup going up against the Lions. And honestly, Garrett Wilson is just a stud. If you look at the splits with Garrett Wilson playing with Zach Wilson compared to Garrett Wilson either with Joe Flacco or with Mike White, this dude is like a top 12 wide receiver with the other quarterbacks. When it's not Zach Wilson, he's insanely talented. You give him a plus matchup. I like him as a wide receiver 1 this week. At 10, I have DK Metcalf going up against the 49ers. Not a great matchup, but DK Metcalf just continues to produce week after week. Some players, you just trust them regardless of the matchup. At 12, I have Mike Williams. Same thing with what I said about Keenan Allen. I love the matchup here. Mike Williams looks like he's back, dropped like a 116 and a touchdown line. Looked like the Mike Williams of old, so I love him, or not of old, pre-injury. Dude's still in his prime, but I like him as a top 12 wide receiver this week. I wouldn't, have any concerns firing him up as a very strong play. Now moving into the wide receiver 2s, I have DeAndre Hopkins here at 13 going up against the Broncos. This really just comes down to the concern with their overall offense and the quarterback play. Colt McCoy is, I guess, a decent backup, but going from Kyler, who I thought this offense was going to be clicking rest of season, now to going to Colt McCoy, and the offense probably isn't going to look great. I think it bumps him slightly out of the top 12, but someone I think you still need to trust as a very strong play. And if you had him in your top 12 this week, would not push back against that at all. Now here at 14, I have Jalen Waddle, and Waddle's a tough guy to rank because early on in the season, the dude was an absolute stud. Last few weeks, he's kind of fallen off a little bit. I'm not totally panicking here on Jalen Waddle. I'm willing to go back to the well on him here against the Bills. I understand if you want to panic and go for some of these guys I have ranked after him, but I would feel totally fine firing him up as a high-end wide receiver 2. Behind him, I have Tyler Lockett, and even though Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are pretty much like neck and neck in production, I continue to rank DK Metcalf higher just because Lockett has been a little touchdown dependent. I mean, the dude just can't go a game without scoring a touchdown, so his overall floor in terms of yardage and receiving volume is definitely lower than Metcalf's, but I'm nitpicking here because you just fire him up as a high-end wide receiver 2, and you feel very good about it. At 16 here, I have Chris Godwin. Buccaneers offense, wildly disappointing, but Chris Godwin is still the wide receiver to play here. They continue to pepper him with targets. He's getting involved. I talked about it in the last video. He's not separating. He doesn't really do much after the catch. Obviously, this is due to him coming off of that ACL tear, but as a fantasy weapon, someone you can definitely trust in your lineups as a wide receiver too. Every week I'm hoping they're able to get this together, but I don't really think there's any, signs that this will improve rest of season. So unfortunately, he's a mid-tier wide receiver too. If this offense was clicking, I mean, I would be ranking both him and Evans in the top 12, but that's just not what we're looking at right now with that Bucs offense. At 17, I have Christian Kirk. Tough matchup here against the Cowboys, but still someone I like as a mid-tier wide receiver too, especially with Trevor Lawrence just playing out of his mind, over like the second half of the season. At 18, I have Terry McLaurin. Gotta love Terry McLaurin when he's playing with Taylor Heineke. Just a set it and forget it, wide receiver 2 every single week. 19, I have Devonta Smith. Now, I do think Dallas Goedert potentially coming back. I think it's going to hurt Devonta Smith in the long term. However, for this specific week, you could put a million weapons on this team, and I'd be willing to bet on every single one of them. Like I said with A.J. Brown, it's a great matchup. Love Devonta Smith here. With Goddard out, he has been a monster. Maybe they kind of gear Goddard back in slowly, but even if Goddard's back, I still really like Devonta Smith this week. Here at 20, I have Christian Watson. I'm kind of, buying into him just continuing this hot stretch. Not exactly buying in the sense that I think he's going to drop like 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. But, we've seen the last few years, some of these rookie wide receivers, they break out towards the end of the year, the Amon-Ra's. You just kind of got to let them go and throw them into your lineup. Christian Watson is clearly very talented. Clearly, he's started to connect with Aaron Rodgers, so I like him as a top 20 guy this week. Right behind him, I have Michael Pittman at 21. I love the matchup here for Pittman. Talked about his splits with Matt Ryan, where, you had the few games with Sam Ehlinger that kind of tanked his production and his averages. But with Matt Ryan, he's a very solid quarterback. Plus, you give him the good matchup. I like him as a back-end wide receiver too. Behind him, I have Amari Cooper. Not necessarily a great matchup here for Cooper. Deshaun Watson hasn't been, ideal. I really thought that Amari Cooper was going to be like a league winner. Like I thought 3 games in or 2 games into Deshaun Watson returning, I thought I'd be ranking Amari Cooper at like wide receiver 6 because he was balling out with Brissett. I thought you bring in Deshaun Watson, he's going to be a stud. Now, it's possible that Deshaun Watson kind of has it all click in this game. I do think it's probably going to happen this season at some point. I'm just not really, willing to bet that it happens here. But if Deshaun Watson can click, Amari Cooper is going to be looking great rest of season. At 23, I have Juju Smith-Schuster. He had the few down games coming off of that concussion where he just, wasn't playing the normal routes. He was playing like sub 60% of the snaps, which just wasn't what we were seeing prior to that concussion. But I mean, in his games where he has been, the full wide receiver 1, he has been on an absolute tear. He had the few monster games before his concussion, had a big game this past week. I like him as a wide receiver too. And then to finish up the top 24, this is where I have Chris Olave. The touchdowns haven't been there. We know he's very talented. We'll see what he can do here against the Falcons. Now we shift into the wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 25 through wide receiver 36. Brandon Ayuk was someone who I did consider in that top 24 going up against the Seahawks, but with Deebo Samuel, very likely out for this game, Ayuk's going to be operating as the wide receiver 1. I think that makes him a much safer week-to-week play, whereas if you have Deebo, Kittle, McCaffrey, like the weekly floor for a lot of those guys kind of suffers because there are just so many mouths to feed. After him, I have T. Higgins, who at this point, it's very tough to evaluate it. I think I talked about it a little bit in the wide receiver video and then also responding to some of the comments, but just the whole thing that's happened with him where he's active, we don't hear anything, then he just doesn't play. It's basically the second time that's happened, which is just brutal for fantasy. Like, I don't know how you can fully trust him in your fantasy playoffs where if you're choosing between like a Higgins and even like a Jerry Jeudy or a Donovan Peoples-Jones, like obviously Higgins, if he plays, is the much better play. He'd probably be like a top 12 guy this week, but the fall off of someone just not playing, like that can just kill your chances of winning your week. So I have him here at 26. Hopefully we get better news throughout the week, but right now, just not ideal for T. Higgins. It's also not ideal here for Mike Evans. It seems like the Evans-Brady connection has pretty much deteriorated with the offensive line being terrible, Brady not feeling comfortable in the pocket, kind of struggling mechanically because of that. Mike Evans is really kind of getting the short end of the stick here, and it's not like Mike Evans has been lighting it up. He has had his own fair share of issues, but that all leads to him falling to wide receiver 3 territory, which is not at all what I would have expected, coming into this season, where everyone was viewing him as like a top 10 guy. At 28, I have Jerry Jeudy, and there's just a lot of things up in the air right now with the Broncos. Jeudy coming off of a massive 3-touchdown day. I'm going to be totally honest, like I've been pretty low on Jerry Jeudy ever since I started putting out content. Like I've been significantly lower on Jerry Jeudy than consensus. What was it, heading into his sophomore season and then his third year here with Russ? Like I was low on him. He looked great in that past game. I think that was a great sign because it's true that he really hasn't gotten a fair shake in terms of quarterback play. And that was kind of the first game where Russ looked like, he was alive and playing well. But I do have him here at 28 just because I don't think Russ is going to play in this game after taking that brutal hit. And then if Cortland Sutton plays, I think it hurts Jeudy. If we have Rippon playing and Sutton's out, I think you could probably make an argument for him up at like 25, 26, maybe even breaking into the top 24. But I definitely liked what I saw out of Jerry Jeudy. And, coming from someone who has been low on him, it was definitely, a positive mark for him moving forward. At 29, I have Marquise Brown. And like I kind of mentioned with DeAndre Hopkins, I was super excited for this Cardinals offense. I, liked Kyler coming into the season. We now have Marquise Brown and DeAndre Hopkins together on the same field. I like James Conner for fantasy. I thought they were going to be cooking. The Kyler ACL tear just really brutal for Marquise Brown because it clearly looks like DeAndre Hopkins is the number one there. And now you're looking at the number 2 for Colt McCoy. Maybe he has a bounce back game. It's a tough matchup against the Broncos. So I have him here as a mid-tier wide receiver 3, which is pretty unfortunate. Behind him, I have Donovan Peoples-Jones coming off of a massive game in Week 14. I think this is a solid spot for him. If Deshaun Watson puts it all together and has a monster game, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 24 wide receiver next week in these rankings. Then at 31, I have Josh Palmer, and it's pretty rare for me to have like a wide receiver 3 kind of crack the top 36. But when you look at the matchup here, I've talked about it, love this against the Titans. And he still has run a super strong number of routes in Mike Williams' return game. So they are clearly using, 3 wide receivers consistently. And Palmer has proved that he is a talented player. He can produce for fantasy. So I do like him here as a wide receiver 3 option. It's possible that he's been like dropped on waivers with Mike Williams coming back. I think he is very, very playable this week if you do need like a flex option, a wide receiver 3. After him, I have Deontay Johnson. And to be clear, this is Deontay Johnson if Mitch Trubisky is the quarterback. I like Deontay with Trubisky because he peppers him with targets. If it's Pickett, Deontay Johnson probably falls out of this top 36 entirely. At 33, I have Allen Lazard. He's definitely kind of taken a backseat fantasy-wise with Christian Watson balling out, but I still think he's going to be a back-end, wide receiver 3 for me. 34, I have Zay Jones, and Zay Jones is definitely trending up rest of season alongside Trevor Lawrence balling out. He's coming off a big day. Kind of tough matchup here against the Cowboys, but someone who I think can be consistently started as a back-end wide receiver 3. 35, I have Elijah Moore. I love the matchup. Corey Davis leaving with a concussion. Elijah Moore had great usage, great snaps, led the team in targets. I think this could be the start of like a late season kind of Elijah Moore redemption run because he was brutal early on. If you guys have been here all season long, I was a big fan of him coming into the season. I was a big, supporter of him early on. I thought he was going to get it together, and he didn't. Maybe this is, a opportunity for me to be like 1% right heading into the year. And then to wrap up the top 36, I have Gabe Davis here going up against the Miami Dolphins. It's not a great look for Gabe Davis. He's definitely struggled. I just have him here as like a ceiling play. Everyone was kind of bought in, like the usage is great, like the role is going to be awesome for him, and it's kind of just the lesson that I feel like we have to learn every single year, that a wide receiver targets are earned. You can't just, stick some guy into a spot and all of a sudden he's going to be an absolute stud. That's kind of what we've seen here out of Gabe Davis. That offense is Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, and the rest of the weapons are really nothing special there. And then just to give a few kind of honorable mentions, guys like Adam Thielen, Darius Slayton, DJ Chark, Jacoby Myers, these are guys who could have filled into one of those last few spots. And then also, I guess, Cortland Sutton, if he is able to suit up this week against the Cardinals. So that is going to wrap it up for my top 36. If you guys did enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, go check out the running backs. Stay tuned for the other positions coming out tomorrow. But thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next one.